Hey everyone, welcome back to the Rare Earth Exchanges podcast. You've got me, Dustin, and of course, Daniel. Daniel, how the heck have you been this last week? You've been traveling some more, but how have
I
you
w-
been?
Good. I was traveling. I was out in Atlanta visiting with a government agency, and I think Dustin, what we're doing, we have more people interested all the time. I mean, we're having Wall Street stock analysts contact us. We were on Time Magazine.
Yeah, we were quoted. You were.
Yeah,
So,
that's us, and we're. I think people overall are really appreciating our content. It's extremely timely. We're in the middle of this trade war with China, which is unfortunate, but it's driving enormous amounts of traffic. Thousands and thousands of people are coming to rare earth exchanges from all over the world. So it's pretty fun, exciting, exhilarating time.
yeah, it really is. Yeah, like you said, some of it's unfortunate, like the trade war and stuff, but we're excited with the traffic who's coming and all that. So,
Absolutely. So, Dustin, as we always do, you look at some of the news items that we've been reporting on, and we have a mix of topics. We don't have to rehash the China, U.S., tit for tat. We're just in a bad situation. We got to get through it. One of the first articles that you brought to my attention was China warns of neo-expansionism as rare earth tensions escalate, especially up in the Arctic. Okay. Now, this particular article comes out of Chinese media. So, as many that go to visit rare earth exchanges or this podcast know, we review a lot of Chinese media. So to see what they're saying, and of course, some of the media are state owned. So there's going to be propaganda. But we have that over on in our neck of the woods as well. Who can trust mainstream media today, for goodness sake? So what is China saying? State-run media over there. One, they're criticizing us, the United States, for territorial ambitions in Greenland, framing this as destabilizing 19th century style, imperialistic land grabs. Okay, so they're really, positioning us, America, United States, the Trump administration, as going back to almost like a mercantilistic, imperialistic, type of flavor. Now, Greenland has a lot of untapped mineral wealth. We've talked about this, a lot of rare earth elements, and those are becoming a strategic battleground for global powers, mainly the United States and China, which is really what this trade war is all about. The Arctic emerges as a key geopolitical hotspot where mineral resources, military positioning, and international diplomacy intersect. So Dustin, and just jump in when you feel like it. In this provocative editorial coming from state-run media in China, Beijing is framing our administration, Trump administration's revived interest in Greenland and Panama as well, as a quote unquote destabilizing return to 19th century style land grabs. So going back to when, the West was still being settled, for example. And the rumors, they say, including rumored military backed acquisition of Greenland and symbolic gestures like renaming the Gulf of Mexico the Gulf of America. Now, they say this poses a threat to the post World War II international order. Now, what I find fascinating is that the post World War II international order was developed by the United States. The United States actually created this order, and it was through, liberalized trade and a whole bunch of other concepts that are pretty good. Very good. Now, Nixon did something similar in the early 70s. I forget exactly what year. He took the United States unilaterally off of the gold standard to fiat money, meaning just you trust the treasury, we print the money. So it's similar what kind of Trump is doing in some ways. It's a unilateral move to shake up the dynamics. Whether you like it or not, whether you agree with it or not is separate, okay? It's above our pay grade to disagree with it. No, nobody
yeah.
cares. Nobody cares what we say. I mean, obviously people care. They come, we talk about rare earths, but we're not going to talk about what we would do. Okay. Now, we acknowledge, when we're reading state-run media that there's propaganda. There's no doubt that there's biased Chinese interests in these news, but still, it's good to get different people's perspectives. The, uh, you know, their point is that control over Greenland gives Washington a real dominant foothold into the emerging Arctic shipping lanes and mineral corridors, what they call mineral corridors. Now, what's interesting is China has tried to get into Greenland multiple times, but they do it, Dustin, through deals. They try to negotiate deals with specific mines or mining companies to get certain locations to try to develop. And the U.S. has been, whether it's under Biden or under Trump, the U.S. is typically trying to thwart those deals and the deal making that China is doing. So, but from a market perspective, this article out of China hints at a deeper concern. Again, that the U.S. their mineral power. If the U.S. gets Greenland, and if the U.S. learns how to do the processing, refining, and that value-added production that we've talked about, China is concerned about that. They are. It's some time off. It's some years off, but it's not in the short run. Like we've said, if the U.S. had Greenland tomorrow, it's not going to really help much for what the current situation is. But it will definitely have an impact in the future. Now, I will say, we've looked into this. Greenland belongs to Denmark. It's a Danish holding. Denmark's an ally of ours. They've been a very solid ally during World War II. This is an interesting story. We leased Greenland from Denmark, although Denmark was controlled by the Nazis. But there was like an ambassador that was one of the first Danish government that weren't Nazis that went and did a deal with the U.S. So the Nazis were furious because they're like, hey, you can't represent Denmark. We're controlling Denmark. And the real Danish government guys said, tough shit. I'm doing a deal with the Americans. So the U.S. got into Greenland during World War II. And then during the Cold War, the U.S. approached Denmark, negotiated a deal, and put missiles up there and, radar and everything. So I don't get why, honestly, Dustin, and I want to ask you this. Why didn't Trump just go to Denmark, meet with them behind closed doors and say, look, guys, we need some help here. Let's do a deal. Why didn't they do that?
That's a great question, honestly. Why isn't he doing that with anything? Honestly. From from Trump's first presidency, I honestly believe that even bad news was good news to Trump, right? Any publicity was good to him, positive or negative. And I think he's just a president that likes the show of sorts. And so I think his effort of not doing anything behind closed doors is probably catering to some of that. I also think that there's probably some, what's the word I'm thinking of, integrity behind his words of like a more transparent government and not, doing these behind closed door deals or discussions. Like he's inviting, the public in. So it's probably a combination of that. But yeah, it's interesting that he's the way he's going about it. So,
For sure. I think, again, I may be wrong, but I think if he would have just went to Denmark behind closed doors and said, hey, I think we need to structure some kind of partnership deal, I think Denmark would probably accommodate, but maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. But either way, that's an interesting piece we covered. There's a lot of good stuff we've covered. And by the way, for everybody listening, Rare Earth Exchanges has enormous amounts of content. We've got original content, we've got aggregate, we report on studies and try to simplify them and make them more understandable, complex geology or engineering, chemical engineering that's involved with some of this stuff. And then we're doing top stock picks and all kinds of different content that's really exciting for those that like to learn and know more about what's going on in this very important, very, very important area. So the next one is interesting. It's a company, American Rare Earth executive warns U.S. still dangerously dependent on China. And that is true. And his name is Mark Smith, and he is a CEO of Neocorp Development. They are publicly traded, I believe, and I believe they are. I think so, yeah. He was on Fox News. They have the Elk Creek project, which is in Nebraska, which is targeting high-value strategic minerals like niobium, titanium, and other rare earth elements. It is a $1.2 billion project. There are some funding challenges they have, at least in the past. They've been seeking financing from the U.S. Export-Import Bank, which is part of the first executive order. Remind me, I want to talk about the second executive order that just happened. So I'll do that next. In this frank interview, he spoke with Fox and discussed this project, and basically saying while the U.S. is making strides towards developing a domestic supply chain around rare earth elements, particularly, he said, under Trump's aggressive executive actions. This CEO emphasized that full self-sufficiency is still years away. And we wrote that we concur with that assessment. We believe we're probably 5 to 10 years away from full resilience, assuming the government takes it very seriously, invests continuously, etc. So obviously, his project in Nebraska, he claims a fast track trajectory with permits in hand and construction ready. That's where he says he's at. The site would produce high value strategic minerals, including some of the ones I'd mentioned previously. He's overall, this CEO is supportive of Trump's executive orders and the new Section 232 investigation, which is we'll go into in a minute. And key is midstream and even downstream processing. Getting this midstream processing and downstream production is the weakest link. He's saying is the weakest link, which we agree. Again, there's the mines. You can get this stuff, but it's getting it in mass and then processing it, refining it, then manufacturing magnets, components, assemblies, what have you. So we kind of look at some of these interviews and we're pretty critical because, again, some of these folks are stock trades, so we want to understand what they're all about. Well, one of the things that this CEO doesn't take head on really fully is first capital and technical barriers. While Smith emphasizes speed to market, he underplays the billions in investment and years of technical R&D necessary to build separation and related facilities for heavy rare earth metals. I mean, if you think about it, China has an entire ecosystem and value chain that's fully integrated. They pull the stuff out continuously with a lot of automation. They refine it. And remember, Dustin, this is more like petroleum refining than traditional mineral mining, okay? And then they have the production facilities to make magnets and all kinds of other products. And then they're integrating with steel companies and textile companies and medical companies. So the Chinese right now are investing heavily in taking the rare earth outputs and innovating in actual products to create new markets, like new types of steel, like new textiles, like in medicinal products or devices. So I think the key here with this article, if anyone's interested, this is a company, Neocorp. They have had some issues. Just paid down an $8 million note, so that's good. They paid their debt off. That's a good sign. They still lose some money, but they've got a big project in Nebraska. Now, we've heard some rumblings about this project that there have been challenges, but that doesn't mean you don't give a guy a chance, right? So, I mean, I think investors,
American dream, after all.
yeah. I mean, investors should at least look at what they're trying to do. We're not making any recommendations here, but I think
Definitely not making recommendations on where to invest. But commenting on this though, I think it is interesting. Like, we've been beating this drum since we started the podcast of the domestic projects, the mining, the refining. Like, the funding part is going to be probably the number one challenge, despite any best intentions of bringing anything onshore for us to reduce our dependence on foreign trade for those materials and things like that. So I think this just is another sign of this is great, but who's going to pay for it? And unlike the Chinese and their state-backed approach, right, we don't have that here. And so
no.
it's just a struggle, right? This is just another example of that struggle that's going on.
It's a real struggle. I mean, we try to educate people that we're not in a free market in this situation. The competition is a communist operation. The companies, conglomerates that are doing the mining and the processing are owned by the state. Some of their shares are traded. I mean, you can buy shares in these companies, but they're controlled by the state. And the state doesn't buy these companies and control them and manage them to be profitable. That's not why the Chinese government did this. This is what people don't understand. They did this for control and power, which is what they're showing us now. They've cut off several of these elements. And it's just a matter of time before, our defense contractors or our device companies or our electronics companies are going to have some trouble, right? Now, I want to talk briefly about this executive order, this 232, it's called. That was done just on the 15th, so 2 days ago. It seems like it's just yesterday. President Trump issued this order investigating the national security risk of the U.S. dependence on foreign processed critical minerals. It just blows my mind. Okay, and then I want to get into this with you. Number two, the order triggers a 180-day Department of Commerce investigation, potentially enabling tariffs, domestic production incentives, and supply chain restructuring. Third, the executive order diagnoses U.S. mineral supply chain vulnerabilities, but risks giving China time to strengthen its global mineral processing dominance. What's going on here? We just had an executive order in March to let's get on it, folks. We're at a disadvantage. Let's start mining. Dig, baby, dig. Now, he didn't process and manufacture, baby manufacture. So that's a problem. But study it for 6 months? What is this?
Yeah, it's too long.
When you're at war, I mean, let me tell you, Dustin, we're going to war against an enemy and they're killing us. They're slaughtering us. So, hey, let's study them for 6 months. And somebody was telling me, well, maybe that's deception. No, it's not deception. What the U.S. is saying, there's only one thing this can mean, in my opinion. And you tell me if I'm wrong. We either don't know what we're doing, or this is Trump signaling to the Chinese president that, hey, we're going to work with you. What else could it be? Am I missing something?
I honestly, I don't think you're that far off. But also, in a way, if I were to like read between the lines, I'm like, you really didn't understand how much you were being fed by the hand that was feeding you. And so you're like, we need to take a step back and actually evaluate whether or not we should engage in this trade war, right? Like, I'm just like,
Yeah.
did you not know?
No, he didn't. I think this was a cowboy move. Look, I understand some of the impetus for doing it. Everything's out of whack. Wealth inequalities and all these things are out of whack. The middle class is shrinking. I think there's a lot of good intentions that President Trump has. Okay, I really do. I think he's having to try to shake things up. I would have probably done it differently, but he's the guy in charge. Now, I think we know what the problem is. Since we started this website in October, we've been writing about this. We've met some real experts, okay? These are like top experts that they're busy working with these huge corporations and governments, but they've been very supportive of us because they like what we're doing. And we've been told by these experts that the people don't know what's going on, Dustin, and that most of these layers rolling up to like Trump, a lot of these people don't know what's going on and they don't want to deliver bad news. Okay. So, it's one thing to have a bunch of people that you trust around you. And I get that because of his first presidency, he ran into a lot of really nasty backstabbing politics. Okay. He really did. They tried to set him up with the Russia thing, all that stuff. Okay. So this go round, he's just getting loyalists, people that just, are going to be loyal. He doesn't care about the smart people. So, and I get it. There's a rationale, but what I'm saying here is, we got to be very careful here. We're the United States of America. This is an extremely important place for the world economy, and we got to make sure that we come out of this better.
That's the intent, right? That's what we're seeing. Signs are trending towards, how do we strengthen our position? But I agree with you. Probably would have done it a little differently. So,
Well, just to finish on this, sorry, go ahead, Dustin.
yeah, go for it.
So just to finish, this Section 232 process is bureaucratically timed 180 days for a report, then potentially White House action. What? 6 months and then maybe some action? No, he's just good. This is likely to lead to, all right, President Trump, the report's in, we're screwed. What do you think we should do? Okay. Again, unlike the rapid retaliatory measures often used by China, this EU launches a study. not a counterpunch. Beijing may read this as a tactical pause, not a policy offensive. Okay, so maybe it's telling them. I mean, again, I think Trump and Xi Jinping, the Chinese head, like each other. I think they get along, and I think if there's an excuse for them to come together, they'll talk, and it will come out all of us better. My opinion, okay, and this is my opinion. People can disagree. You know, I'm a globalist. I think I'm a patriot, but I'm also a globalist. I think that trade it's all about capitalism and world trade, and yeah, it should be fair. And China and the United States, if we can form something that's enduring. Like China should open up their rare earth industry. Let private equity in the US come in and invest and be part of it. We should it's all about building value and spreading it around and allowing middle classes to prosper, not just having a few billionaires that gobble everything up and, the rest of us fight over crumbs. That's not fun. So this is where I'm coming from on this.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think globalization is not only important, I think it's vital. I think the world is too small to be solely dependent on our own resources. So yeah, I think it'd be great if we could all just learn to share. But I would also add to that though, like as nice as it would be to share, I think we also need to find a level playing field where it is fair. Because right now, China is choking out the competition, right?
Yeah.
People
Yeah.
don't want to do business with other people because China is cheaper. And as nice as it is to get a good deal on something, it makes it unfair. And that's why we're in the
Hold
situation.
on, Justin. As you as a consumer, do you go and look, when you go buy your MAGA hat for $5, it's made in China, So I mean, do you really care? I mean, in other words, don't you want a cheaper product if it's assuming the quality's there?
I mean, yeah, but
Yes.
because
See, you're the problem. You, the consumer. I don't mean you personally, but the consumer drives these things.
well, they do, but why? I mean, if the consumer had more cash flow, would they care the cost of things?
Of course, the more money you make, the more you care.
Right.
I mean,
So
anybody
you
that
made a
works in
comment
rent,
earlier of just things are out of whack. The inequality, income inequality, like the middle class is getting smaller. Like, why is that happening? Like, yeah, I think there's a lot of external forces.
yeah, no, there's a lot. But let's take manufacturing, and then I want to go into one other article. The manufacturing is automated for the most part. So as manufacturing comes back, we can't fill the manufacturing jobs that we have today in the United States. I mean, Biden had already, and I'm not supporting Biden here, but I'm just telling you, the CHIP Act and other things, there were already a lot of manufacturing. I was down in Savannah, Georgia, in the southeast, and there's all kinds of, it's a boom. This is before the election. So, but it's all high tech and you need a lot of training. And so we need to develop the workforce. We need to improve our education. There's a lot of things that we need to do. We've got a cultural problem. I'm sorry that people don't want to work as hard. There's entitlement. There's a lot of issues, okay? I don't want to get political here. So I want to talk about something else. Another piece, a piece of news, and it's not rare earths. We also cover critical minerals, which are very important, and they come out of the ground too. So we might as well put them together. Bitter partisan clash. Now, this is what's going to happen, Dustin, when we do bring mining back in. This is in Maine, beautiful state. Bitter partisan clash in Maine over lithium mining law amid the national critical minerals push. Okay. So there's two bills coming out of Maine, one LD 795, LD 1073, that address lithium mining regulations and environmental safeguards. And again, lithium is a critical mineral, it's not a rare earth. Republicans seek to exempt what we call pegmatite mining from strict environmental review. Pegmatite, Dustin, is, how there's granite? The granite, we have some in the Salt Lake Mountains, there's a sort of a granite material. A pegmatite is a freak granite. It's where it's a dike, so it's like a crack, and the hot magma comes up and it cools slowly. It's not volcanic; it's just mantle magma. It cools slowly, but it's a pocket, and there's different elements that get in there. minerals and what have you. That's how lithium forms, and then it can form giant crystals. I mean, a lot of rare, gemstones can come out of pegmatite. So this is the pegmatite mining that we're talking about here. So while the Republicans are saying, yeah, let's go get that lithium, the Democrats are saying, hey, let's expand health and environmental oversight. So there's a legislative standoff, and it centers on the balancing of critical mineral extraction with these long-term ecological and community safety issues that the Democrats raise. So they're fiercely at odds. We got this out of the Maine Morning Star and actually the Maine Monitor, and this is a few weeks ago. So, there's this battle, and the different sides are taking their position. The question is, though, as we start to bring mining back here, assuming we do that, right? There's another approach, which is build a tight network of partners like Canada, which is mostly uninhabited and have enormous amounts of minerals. But Canada's not in a good mood right now. So bring it to everybody's attention. In rare earth exchanges, we are going to be looking at clashes around laws, compliance, regulations, not only in the United States, but in other countries. In fact, we've got some legal content we're working on. So that's going to be really cool. And at some point, we might even have a legal database of whatever country you're going into, this is what you can deal with, type of thing. And we're really excited about that. So that's another piece of news that, again, I thought we would just raise because it is showing you the type of clashes that we can expect here.
Right.
Do we have time for another one?
Nope. I think we're out of time.
Okay.
So save it for next week. But yeah, I think there's a lot of interesting things going on. I mean, within the government, got a lot of geopolitical tensions going on. We've got mines that are struggling to get funded here domestically, and we have our own geopolitical tensions within our own country. We got Democrats and Republicans trying to stonewall each other to prevent progress and the ways that probably need to happen. But crazy stuff. So everyone come to the website, rareearthexchanges.com. We've got news publishing every day, multiple times a day. And as always, please consult your financial advisor if you are interested in any type of investment in this space. We are not making recommendations, but just pointing it out, what people are up to. So, any final words, Daniel?
Just that it's really exciting, the growth, seeing the website, thousands and thousands of people coming. The podcast is growing. We were on Time Magazine. That was great. We're starting to make an impact. So it's been a fun ride, Dustin. I'm glad we're doing it together.
Absolutely. So thanks everyone for joining. Catch us next week.